Hello and welcome to the Show Up Dad. This is a podcast for tradesmen, fathers looking to level up their fathering skills. Today we have a special guest, Adria Sullivan. She is a licensed clinical mental health counselor and provides counseling and neurofeedback in North Carolina. With over 11 years of experience, Adria is committed to helping individuals reach their wellness goals and live their lives with intention. Her vision is to meet you where you are and encourage growth by focusing on your mental, physical, and spiritual health. Today's topic is going to talk about dads and how they get burnout too, and why and how many of them feel they can't talk about it. So to give you a brief breakdown, burnout is a state of mental and physical exhaustion that can zap the joy out of your career, friendships, and family interactions. Continual exposure to stressful situations like caring for an ill family member, working long hours, or witnessing upsetting news related to politics and school safety can lead to this stress condition. People experiencing burnout often feel like they have nothing left to give and may dread getting out of bed each morning. They may even adopt a pessimistic outlook toward life and feel hopeless. Adria, I'm so happy to have you on here, and I welcome you to this podcast and just to get your information about burnout, this topic. And, I'd like to have you encourage you to give our audience, a brief breakdown of a little bit more about you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, David, for having me on. I'm Adria Sullivan. And I will say when you first approached me to be on this podcast for dads, I was a little hesitant. Clearly a woman, and most of my work is in helping women fight burnout and learn communication techniques to really connect with their partners, to raise healthy and confident kids, and do all of that while still trying to maintain their sense of self. But when I really took the time to think about it, we're all similar in our desire for connection, as well as our struggle to get past our own negative thoughts. Plus, I really thought this was a great opportunity for me to share my family's personal struggle with burnout and offer some hope that through God's amazing grace, we can all get through the tough times. So I hope today I can provide you all with some insight, some extra tips, and give you hope that there is another way if you're feeling tired, exhausted, and burned out.
Well, that's so awesome that you're on here once again, Adria. Let's go ahead and, just dive deep into this topic, okay?
Sure.
What are some of the signs of burnout? And is it hard to spot?
Yeah. Well, I do find that burnout is easily noticed, but people try to just plow through it. They buckle down, they work harder. But unfortunately, that just leads to more burnout, right? It's often dismissed, and maybe your friends or your family are the ones that start to bring it to your attention and just kind of tell you they've noticed a behavior change. But overall, we just keep pushing forward and we justify our actions, even when they might be hurtful to ourselves and those around us. In a perfect world, when someone brings that to your attention, this could lead to healing and problem solving and self-awareness. But instead, our internal alarm goes off and it kind of screams to us like, just get over it. You're fine. This is only going to be for a short time. We have to do this.
Yeah.
So, right. Like, I absolutely get that. Your self-defense mechanisms are there to support you, or I'm sorry, to protect you and support you, I guess. But if you believe you have to work long hours in order to provide for your family, then when those people come to you, you're not going to give a crap about what they say about you being crabby or irritable or looking tired. You're just going to protect that value of yours at all costs. But what if the value that you have was developed due to some irrational beliefs? I do want to get to that a little bit later on about like what is an irrational belief. But let me answer your question, about what does burnout look like. So I want to give you a few ideas of what to look for to determine if you might be headed down the path of burnout. So I'm glad this is recorded because, these are a lot of questions, but write them down if you can, or just if you can say yes to any of these.
Mhm.
So have you become cynical or critical at work? Do you drag yourself to work or have trouble getting started? Have you become irritable or impatient with coworkers, customers, or clients? Do you lack the energy to be consistently productive? Do you find it hard to concentrate? Do you lack satisfaction from your achievements? Do you feel disillusioned about your job? Are you using food, drugs, or alcohol to feel better or just to simply numb out?
Mm.
Have your sleep habits changed? Are you troubled by unexplained headaches, stomach, or bowel problems, or do you have any other physical complaints? Have arguments increased with your spouse? And do you feel you have nothing left to give to your family at the end of the day? So if you could answer yes to any of those questions, you might be headed down a dangerous and self-destructive path, a path that you never meant to set out on. This is the time to reevaluate your beliefs and your values.
Hmm. Yeah, those are really good right there that you put down, because I think any person being honest with himself can at least attest to being at least three. I know I can go through this and, hindsight looking back, I can be like, hey, man, I've experienced every single one of these things,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm surprised my wife actually stayed with me,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, because I was crabby. Like I said, I can recognize with every single one of these things. You know
But
what I
you
mean?
justified it, right?
Oh, absolutely. I
Mhm.
justified it in the sense that I was being a good provider and I wanted to provide for my family. I wanted to
Mhm.
provide a better life for them.
Yeah.
And like you touched earlier, I don't think there is a way for my wife. In fact, I know there was not a way for my wife to approach me and tell me, I need you. You know
Yep.
what I mean? One of the things she told me was, I'm dating my husband. And another thing she also stated to me was, look, I just want you. I don't all this stuff doesn't matter if I don't have you,
Mhm.
and it was,
But what your core belief is, that's not true. Like, no, I'm supposed to provide financially. That's what you
mhm,
were probably raised to believe. And so we do have to learn to trust our spouse that what they tell us they need is actually what they need.
mhm.
And maybe it's just our own belief that's getting in the way.
I think a lot of it, though, from a man's perspective, is ego.
Sure.
I had been down that route to where, I know what it's like to put away diapers or buy groceries, you know what I mean? Because I can't afford both. That's one of the reasons why I chose the line trade. And this is even with a degree. I had a degree in computer networking previous. And
Hmm.
so that bruise to our ego, our pride, when you're having to do stuff like that and you're working long hours and you're still not making enough, it sucks. It really does. And I made this internal vow that I would never be in that situation again.
Hmm.
So that vow that I spoke over myself, is what drove me to this ambition to where, you know what, I'm going to work as hard as possible. I'm going to do what I need to do. Even though deep down inside, I knew that my family was hurting.
Yeah.
It was that vow that I spoke over myself that kept me in
Hmm.
bondage.
And that's not bad. Ambition is great,
Hmm.
but it's kind of those unrealistic expectations you put on yourself,
Hmm.
and dismissing the hurt that it's really doing, kind of focusing on, I guess, in some ways just money. And I get that you don't want to have to choose between food and diapers, but in doing that we kind of put ourselves in a box and stop looking at some alternatives that might allow us, a little bit of the best of both worlds.
Mm. Yes, exactly. Simplifying, right?
Yeah, right.
That's what,
Exactly.
that's what my wife always told me. She's like, well, we could always simplify. I don't know why you want
Yeah.
to have a farm. I don't know why you want to have this ranch. You know what I mean? And they're like, no, we're gonna
Yeah.
have it. But
Yep.
what are some things men can do to openly discuss and talk about their stress?
Mm. So I don't just see women. I do have quite a bit of males that come into my practice, but honestly, they are sometimes the hardest to work with. They just tend to be closed off emotionally, and their beliefs are so hardwired that they struggle to believe that their family would rather them provide presence over money. Exactly what you just said.
Hmm.
um, so I generally start off by allowing them to vent and just hold a safe space for them to feel heard. I mean, this isn't all men, but most that I tend to see um, keep all their thoughts in their head. They're just constantly thinking and putting pressure on themselves. They aren't used to allowing them to come out of their mouths and find it very hard to share those feelings. So once I'm able to find a topic that they feel safe about, the rest kind of flows out. So I want all of you men who are listening to know that men attend counseling.
Hmm.
They do. There's lots of them out there. There's big, strong, burly men, celebrities, the coaches of your favorite sports teams. They come to counseling. It isn't as taboo anymore.
Hmm.
And going to counseling does not at all mean that you're broken or you have some serious mental health problem. The majority of people come because they're just stressed out and they need somebody to take, like they to dump on, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
um so it just means you are willing to do whatever it takes to improve your overall wellness, be the best father to your kids, show up and be a partner for your wife, and live like God intended you to live.
Hmm.
Um, so these days, it's even easier to connect with a therapist. I offer video counseling, and a lot of therapists do now due to COVID. I've had clients talk to me in their cars on their lunch breaks. They'll set up their phone in their bathroom while they're just getting ready for the day. Or they'll just talk to me in their bed if they just feel like they can't get out. So there's no longer those excuses like I don't have time or I just can't get there. So I really encourage you all to, seek that out. But if counseling just doesn't seem to be your thing yet, I encourage you to seek out a coach or a mentor. Find someone in your life you see as kind of like doing life the right way and talk to them. Ask them how they seem to be able to do it all. I promise what you're going to find is that they also struggle in ways, and you can learn from that.
Hmm.
The main difference, by the way, between a therapist and a coach, coaches don't so much worry about why you are the way they are. Like they don't really go back into childhood things. They focus primarily on how to get you where you want to go. In fact, even though I am a therapist in my practice, I love helping people identify the why simply so they feel validated and they can kind of connect the dots.
Hmm.
However, I really use that future focused approach to avoid dwelling in that negativity. Um, so if your problem is burnout, then we really do need to move forward towards a solution so you don't waste any more time.
I like that. I really do. What are benefits of talking to someone, if any?
Oh my goodness, if any. Like
Hmm.
I believe every single person in this world should be in counseling. Counselors have counselors. Um, you know, God created Eve so that Adam wasn't alone.
Hmm.
We were never intended to do life alone. Even if you're married and you have friends and you feel like you have tons of people around you, we can still feel isolated emotionally.
Hmm.
Negative thoughts come up and it kind of pushes you away from sharing, though, your true thoughts with those people. Like I said, a lot of people are just up in their heads all the time, and they don't really get out what they need to get out. Plus, your friendships and your relationships, those are two-sided. You can't, like, you really do have to give and take in order to have a healthy, balanced relationship with people. So the biggest benefit from counseling or coaching is that it's all about you. You aren't speaking to someone who needs anything from you. And let's be honest, you already don't have any more to give someone. You don't have to worry about saying the wrong thing or hurting their feelings, feeling judged, or listening to their problems. Now, by the way, if you do experience that in counseling, you've gone to the wrong person, don't go back, but don't give up. Just go look for somebody else. It is important that you find the right fit. Not all therapists are the same. But talking to someone else can also help you learn new ways to communicate your needs to your spouse, which I feel like that's the vital piece to all of this. Traditionally, men are seen as the provider. And although this has evolved with women's rights, the belief that your main attribute to your family is how much money you bring home really needs to be challenged. So earlier I said I wanted to circle back to talking about irrational beliefs. Is that okay if I do that?
Yeah,
right now?
please.
Okay. So we all have them. So you're not alone if any of these kind of sound like something you do, but these beliefs are developed through your lifetime. They're fundamental assumptions that we hold about the world that has never been consciously reviewed since we formed them in childhood. And again, this is kind of another plug for the importance of counseling, because these are hardwired beliefs. We think they're 100% true. And therefore, we're completely unaware that that's a problem. So if we talk to somebody, they can kind of start to point out, I don't know that that's really a rational thought.
Yeah.
So, but core beliefs such as I am defective or inadequate, all of my experiences result in defeat or failure. The future is hopeless. I am not enough. Those are beliefs that if you hold on to those are going to skew your perception, and they get in the way of your happiness. So there's a ton of irrational thoughts out there. I really wanted to pull out just 4 of them that I think when these are put into play, they really can lead to burnout.
Okay.
So one is called all or nothing thinking. This might be if you have a thought, if I don't work this specific job, I'll never find another one that pays enough. Or, one thing I always ask people to do is include some type of physical activity. So that way that's helping the body's stress response recover. Well, a lot of the times then people will say, well, I didn't have an hour. I couldn't find an hour in the day, so I just didn't do anything. Well, that's all or nothing thinking. So number 2, it's called disqualifying the positives. So basically that's just, there could be positives that are happening all around you, but you're dismissing them. And you just keep coming back to maintain this negative. So I hear that when people come in and, spend the first 15 minutes complaining about, their work is horrible, they're at home, their spouse is doing this, their kids are going crazy, nothing's going well. And then I'll say, well, oh, but, didn't you just say, you got a bonus? I'm like, yeah, but that didn't matter. Well, that's no big deal. So that is what happens when you're starting to burn out. You zero in on all the bad. So, number 3 is jumping to conclusions. This is kind of twofold. You could, in fact, it's like a negative interpretation, even though there are no definite facts that support your conclusion. So if you just think people are talking about you, I guess, like that could be one. You're just jumping to conclusions, like they don't even know you. Why would they be talking about you? This is also done, when I see most people are talking about it, let's say you come into the room and your wife is sitting on the couch. There's no TV on. She's not really smiling. She's kind of sitting there and looks up at you.
Mm-hmm.
To jump to conclusions is like, oh, she's in a bad mood. She's mad at me. I did something. And so you just kind of snap, and all of a sudden there's an argument, all because you jumped to conclusions.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
I know
yeah.
that happens. That happens to all of us.
That happens a lot, actually, more than
right.
you think.
Yeah. And then 4 is mind reading. And I know that this is huge. So this is where you arbitrarily conclude that somebody is reacting negatively to you, or that they should just know what you need from them without using your words. Both men and women are super guilty. Not a single one of us is, free from this area. And I'll tell you right now, your spouse cannot read your mind. They don't know how you feel. They don't know what you really need unless you share it with them. On the flip side, you don't know what she needs unless you set aside a moment that's undistracted and listen and hear her. Like, we really do have to show up undistracted for our spouses and say, like, have a chance to share what's actually on your mind and say, what is it that you're thinking, without just guessing. I mean, when we guess, we're always wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time, at least. So I mentioned before the importance of good communication.
Yes.
Poor communication practices within the marriage really do lead to devastation. And I know that sounds like a strong word, but it is right on point. Even if you think you're a pro at communicating, I believe you can always be better. In my practice, I recommend a book. I guess it's okay if I plug somebody at random. So this book has been instrumental in my own life, and every client that actually reads it comes back doing so much better. So it's called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Don't let the title scare you. It doesn't mean you're out there cursing everyone up and down. It really was just an eye opener for me that, some words that you use every day that you don't think can hurt really can actually cause immense pain in your partner. So it teaches you how to better talk to your partner without eliciting their defense to go up. And so that way you can actually be more productive.
Man, those are really awesome for you to share with us, especially that book. I definitely want to jump into that, because I'm a firm believer of trying to just be better, throughout, self-improvement comes mainly from trying to help others. So if I can help myself and then gain knowledge and then try to help others with it, more kudos, that's amazing. One of the things I wanted to circle back on is you talked about on number 2, right? Which is disqualifying the positives. Okay. You talked about how positives happen, but you dismiss them and you have this negative belief. Why do you think that is? I know people aren't inherently negative. I know that. Okay. I actually heard a podcast with Dr. Carolyn Leaf where she talked about the reason why our brains focus on the negative is because we know it's wrong. So our brains automatically red flag it. Okay. They red flag it. They know that this is not right. And that our brains tend to want to fix that way of thinking. And we wind up focusing on it. And then what you focus on kind of determines what your path you're going to be on. Is that true, or? What do you
Oh, that's
think?
absolutely true. I mean, our thoughts are the most powerful tool that we have. And, you know, the why behind why do we always go to the negative? I don't know that. I think it, you just said it's not more the natural thing, but in a way, or maybe the examples that I have in my head, it is more natural, or at least it's more normal because, we're our own worst critics.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to break ourselves down unless we're seeking out self-help and self-development, and we're, actually working to be that better person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but those negative thoughts are easy to come in. Um, you know, the dismissing the positives, I think, happens more often when somebody is depressed
Mm-hmm.
or is just in a state of high stress because they don't have a ton of energy to sit there and work on it. And they're just convinced that it's their way. And so I don't try to, force that person to see the positives.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, when it's that bad, it's like, let's come at this from another angle. Why don't we work on, getting a little bit of exercise in? And that's never to say exercise cures all, but if it does actually decrease your level of stress, then I might be able to talk to you about replacing those negative thoughts with more positive thoughts, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And man, and just want to touch on that again. Um, you were saying that it takes energy, right, to have these positive thoughts, to get out of
Mhm.
that stump, right? So in a sense, being human beings, if you go back into flight or fight, right, type scenario, our
Mhm.
brains want to, hold on to as much energy as possible, right, when we're in these situations. So we're not going to want to tend to focus on the good, right? Because we're conserving energy.
Yes.
It's hard work to think on positive things, right?
Mhm.
So your brain automatically starts focusing on these negative things because why? It's easier. You're conserving energy
Yep.
because you're in this fight or flight type mentality, I guess. You know what I mean? I mean that.
Absolutely. And that's why, that is the fear center of our brain, just setting off those alarms. And when I recognize that, that's why you don't just keep pressing the button and,
Mhm.
increasing that alarm. So you have to find ways to allow your brain or your body to relax and just decrease the stress before you can enter into that realm, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, yeah. That's good stuff right there, man. I was reading this one article where this one father told the Huffington Post, right? He said, "We're expected to not feel. We're expected to just kind of do it without ever having any cracks." Okay. Now that resonated with me as a father, as a lineman, as a tradesman, because I know what it's like to go to work sick, injured, exhausted. Burnout becomes a perpetual state of being at that point, you know, where
Mhm.
you're basically running on these fumes, but still finding a way to keep doing it because you're trying to provide for your family,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes, I know for myself, you start developing keystone habits. Keystone habits, could be good or bad. And you know what I mean? And the keystone habits I started developing in order to stay clipped in, as linemen called it, to keep my head in the game so I wouldn't get injured or hurt or get anybody else injured or hurt, is I started taking stimulants. I started, hitting 2 or 3 Red Bulls, or, and now the drink of the day is bangs. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
like 320 milligrams of caffeine in them things. It's like liquid cocaine, you know, but you start
Mhm.
having all these stimulants. Um, I started finding myself drinking 3 a day because, you're becoming dependent,
Yep.
and I had a cardiologist talk about how that attributes to all these other, creating other underlying health problems with your heart, with your sleep arrhythmia, all kinds of different crazy stuff that goes on with the stimulants. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on how that affects your neurofeedback, and what problems have you seen with stimulants and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm so happy you bring this up. Well, I am not against caffeine consumption in the form of black coffee, or better yet, bulletproof coffee. Um, Caffeine or the use of other stimulants such as Adderall, energy drinks, cocaine, those can all increase your body's stress response even further. Like you said, you develop a tolerance and you have to have more and more, or now you have a headache and now you're uncomfortable, and that's no fun.
No.
So there are two types of stress, good and bad. Stress is how you felt, maybe on your wedding day. Bad stress is having a horrible boss who micromanages and puts you down on. But both cause your body to react in similar ways. It's just that, good stress fades away more quickly and it's balanced out with that feeling of euphoria.
Mm-hmm.
But when we do the damage to our bodies, by having stimulants, this is like toxic stress, or can become that. So toxic stress leads to this adoption of unhealthy lifestyles, which can adversely impact your health, like you're saying, your brain's ability to function at its best, and then bleeds into affecting your family dynamics. These unhealthy lifestyle choices might be stimulants, but they can also be alcoholism, tobacco use, drugs, overeating, promiscuity, gambling. And also, let's not forget, this can come out as like quick tempered and yelling a lot up in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, what I see is, if you're all hopped up on stimulants, then you're not going to be so slow to think through the problems, right? Like your kids are going to be a little crabby and you're going to be quick to pop off, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, but our bodies and brains function best when they find balance. When we have like a healthy sleep cycle and feed it the foods that naturally allow it to have good energy, and we avoid toxins such as maybe artificial sweeteners and other additives. Um, but I want to point out too that when, like I said, this bleeds into your family dynamics, kids are affected more than you might realize. And what I'm about to say, this is by no means meant to make you feel guilty or shameful, because none of us are perfect. We're all going to do something, and our kids are going to be fine as long as we keep trying to show up as our best self.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, but if your unhealthy choices are bleeding into your kids' lives, which they are, understand that your parenting style can actually alter their brainwave pattern. So you brought up neurofeedback.
Mm-hmm.
When brainwaves are not in alignment, depending on where that actually is in the brain, it results in like a slew of symptoms. It could be that child develops an inability to focus, a dysfunctional memory, anxiety, depression. There's so many symptoms that can happen when your brain waves are just out of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so let me tell you guys like a little bit about what neurofeedback is. That is a medication-free approach to um, treating things like PTSD and anxiety, depression, and ADHD. But for starters, neurofeedback starts with a brain map, which simply takes a picture of your brainwave patterns. And we know based on the dysfunction of the brainwaves, that's what produces certain symptoms. Over time in my practice, we can actually work to rewire the brain and have it gravitate towards choosing the correct brainwave pattern through positive rewards. So, bottom line with all of this, we need a brain that is working right.
Yes.
um, our brains are amazing and they are perfectly designed. In a perfect situation, you'd grow up with parents who allowed you to explore, problem solve, and learn self control and be there for you emotionally. You'd never bump your head, you'd never have a food allergy or sensitivity, and you'd manage your stress with ease. Well, unfortunately, welcome to the real world. We're all a little messed up inside of our heads, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
That's why you go to counseling.
Right.
um, but still, your brain is really cool. If it does get damaged, it begins the process of rewiring. Um, Even if you get a concussion or man, you lose one of your senses, or you were just totally emotionally neglected, your brain begins rewiring. So this is why, if you've heard stories, people that lose sight,
Hmm.
they've actually developed the ability to do like echolocation. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that is crazy.
Look it up. So, but in order for your brain to do this, you have to take care of it. When my clients come in, I say, I can do this part. I can train your brain to work for you, but you have to do your part. You have to, stop any drug use if you're doing that. You have to try to work towards better sleep health.
Hmm.
And if you have any food allergies, eat correctly for your body, or that causes inflammation in your brain and it's constantly just working against you. So, burnout, stress, poor nutrition, it all affects your brain's ability to work its magic. And then it goes into survival mode. It stops telling you that it's thirsty, you're hungry, you're tired, because, you stopped listening. So it's going to stop sending out those signals.
Hmm.
I love
And
the brain.
yeah, no, that's amazing. I had a guest on here. Um, in fact, I just posted his podcast earlier this week. His name's Andrew Marr, and
Hmm.
he works with Warrior Angels Foundation, and he was talking about brain waves and stuff like that as well. And it seems like the general consensus between all these doctors, you, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, and others, is that inflammation's a
Yes.
major part of everything, from the cardiologist talking about inflammation in the heart, from the way we eat and stress, to inflammation to the brain. I mean, it's crazy how that's linked with so many different debilitating issues that we have in society today. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Absolutely.
And it's just amazing how men are experiencing such high stress, lack of sleep, and they're having heart risk, heart
Mm.
disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, all these different things, mental illnesses. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
What can you give the audience? What kind of tips can you give the audience to kind of combat this with men?
Hmm. Well, you're spot on. Toxic stress continues to break us down emotionally and physically.
Hmm.
Often I have highly stressed out clients that, want me to help them focus better because that's the problem that they see. Clearly, if you're burning out, you can't focus. If you can focus more, you can do more, you can be more, and you can have more, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But more is the opposite of the solution, unless we're talking more sleep. So, a huge tip that I can give is start with your sleep. If you do not fall asleep within 15 minutes of laying down, that's an indication of a sleep problem or sleep disruption, I should say. If you fall asleep immediately when you close your eyes, no matter where you are, that's an absolute indication that there's a sleep problem. So when you sleep, your brain goes into work, repairing, restoring. You consolidate all the information you learned that day. You rebuild your cells. So if you're not sleeping, or you're at night, your brain is still coming off of the stimulants that you put in it, then you are literally speeding up your death. I
Wow.
know that sounds dramatic, but that's literally what's happening, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And that is
um,
That's interesting that you said that, because I know when I was taking a lot of stimulants, I would have a hard time sleeping.
Yeah.
And another point I want to bring out is, I lost my brother, and for about a month I had trouble sleeping. I could not
Oh,
sleep,
sure.
and I guess it was the stress or
Oh,
whatever was
sure.
was going on, but I started having it, like heart palpitations and everything else, you know what I mean? Thank
Yeah.
God that's gone away, but
Right.
it was real, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I guess my brain was sending these signals to me and being like, hey, something's off in you,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but
Yeah.
I like that you said that you're having a hard time falling asleep. Okay. Now, I never looked at it that way, where you said, if you fall asleep within 15 minutes, that's awesome. I've done that too.
Yeah.
But if you're falling asleep right away, I never knew that that was an indication that you're having sleep issues.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I really have had clients that I'm just doing a map on, and I'm like, today you won't really fall asleep. I'm going to be actually working on your head, and they're out. I'm like, okay, to keep poking them to wake them up. Um, and absolutely, I mean, that is, your brain is so tired that the moment you shut your eyes, it shuts down. Shouldn't really be like that. We should be able to close our eyes a little bit and recharge without, totally sinking down into sleep mode. Would you like for me to share a couple tips on, just a couple ways that I try to teach sleep health?
Yeah. If you don't mind, please.
Okay. So the first thing I say is just try to get on a solid routine.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I promise I understand that this is hard if you work a swing shift or, night shift, whatever that might be. And so again, please come back to the idea that it doesn't have to be perfect. Just try to do your best to set aside, at least 7 hours of sleep. And the best recommendation is, if you don't have a swing shift or whatnot, try to wake up and go to sleep about the same time. And that will just help your circadian rhythms come back into alignment and help you out the best that you can. Um, Now, the hour or so just before you're going to sleep, try to develop a more relaxing nighttime routine.
Hmm.
So I know everybody fights me on this, but your time should not involve screens. It should not involve TV. Ideally, there shouldn't be a TV in your bedroom, because we should associate the bedroom with just sleeping, so that when you walk in, your brain is signaled to say, oh, okay, good, it's time to fall asleep, versus it's time to watch my favorite show.
Hmm.
So if you're that person, you're going to fight me on that, at least try to use a blue filter, the blue light filter, and don't look at work or anything else that's going to elicit, a stress response. Okay. Try that.
Hmm.
um, During that nighttime routine, you could do some stretching, praying, meditation, or you start your whole nighttime routine with like a nice warm shower, just to put the day behind you and get ready for bed. So I mentioned meditation. I know that is another big sensitive topic, especially for men.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I think that's mostly because you might have some preconceived notions about what that means or what that looks like. I'm not saying you have to become a yogi or get to monk status by any means, but in our world today, you are constantly bombarded with information, and there is such a thing as information overload. And really, that's a huge cause to stress and burnout. So meditation is just simply learning how to turn off your thoughts and be in the moment and have like just that moment to clear everything out,
Hmm.
so you can find a moment of peace. Um, it's If you've never done that before, I would recommend doing guided meditation. That can be found on apps like the Calm app. On the Calm app, there's actually a really good series called How to Meditate. And it takes you through 30 days of how to meditate and answers questions for you. That has really been a good hit with my male clients. You can also just go to YouTube, type in 5-minute guided meditation for sleep or 5-minute guided meditation for anything. Don't get caught up with the length of time. Start somewhere and, challenge yourself to get as far as you want.
Hmm.
But I know that that's not easy, and your thoughts are going to try to take you elsewhere. But this is just a practice of becoming self-aware and noticing that they're trying to leave and grabbing a hold of them and bringing them back to you.
That's definitely something our audience is going to really like. I'm going to be looking at that calming app,
Yeah.
because I'm guilty of, we had a, damn Netflix,
I know.
you know what I mean? I got caught up in Cobra Kai, like everybody. I try to watch everything in one night. That's just my personality.
Yep.
And one of the reasons why I don't drink is because if I had a 30 pack, well, by golly, I'm going to finish that 30 pack. That's just my mentality. So same thing with, Netflix. We had The Kingdom that came out, and then Cobra Kai and all these different things. So I try to stay up watching every single one of them, so I definitely want to implement this calming app in there and try to clean up my, time before I sleep. You know what I mean? That way I can get better sleep. One of the things that really, really resonated with me is when you said that we're dying, literally, you know what I mean? With our brains, So I wanted to ask you something.
Sure.
Have you experienced burnout or recognized burnout in someone you know firsthand? Adria, can you share with our audience?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Personally, myself, I've experienced burnout a couple times in my life. Burnout when I first started in the counseling field, where I was just working really long hours and put in dangerous situations, and definitely was not making money, the type of money I felt like I should for putting myself in those situations. And then again, after my first child was born, I went from just being super ambitious and driven. I wanted to make a big difference in the world. And all of a sudden I found myself living in a tiny apartment, 2.5 hours away from family. And my husband worked all the time. So I was expected to run the household without ever really requesting that role. And that definitely started to take a toll on me. But luckily, I've been fairly self-aware the whole time. Maybe it's because I went to school for counseling. I'm not sure. But I knew myself enough and I felt confident enough that, my husband would support anything I came up with. So, I kind of threw myself in other activities that made me or helped me feel some meaning and excitement and just brought me back to who I felt like I was. And then, within my own marriage, before we had kids, we had this grand plan. We wanted to get a big house and live on the beach with our 3 boys, and we were never going to stop working. And so, we chased my husband's promotions that moved us all around the country. That's actually why I stopped working, to raise our 2 girls. But never along the way did we stop and reevaluate. My husband took it upon himself to take on any and every opportunity. He justified it by saying, this is going to get us closer to our goals. And, he would be gone 4 to 5 days a week. And when he was home, he wasn't really home. He was working more hours and out of the house. So, in 2016, this lack of communication and these beliefs that he held on to, it truly led to that destruction that I was talking about earlier. It led to infidelity. He did end up losing his job, and we found ourselves homeless with 2 kids under 2.
Wow.
So it was quite the time that probably could have been prevented, but When God gave us 2 girls instead of 3 boys, you'd think that that would be enough of a sign to realize we weren't in control.
Right.
And, maybe we could have adopted ways of life based on what God says he wants from us instead of relying on our own immature goals. But that's okay. We got through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I come back to the scripture, Matthew 6:24. No one can serve 2 masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And part of, my husband's, I don't know if it's my right to say part of his downfall, but I do think that was because, him or we were focused on the money side and thinking that that was going to help us. And we were neglecting God.
Hmm.
So, I do believe all things came crashing down at once because the burnout level was so high for both of us. Well, my husband didn't realize that his health and our marriage was at stake. The amount of time and energy he put into his job did lead to him burning out. And I really just felt like I was withering away. But believe it or not, by the grace of God, I'm thankful for that time in our lives. I do not regret it. I know that sounds crazy when I say that, but you know, I don't know why we always have to wait till we hit rock bottom before we wake up and make a change.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope today you all take what I'm sharing and start the path of self-awareness and healing. You know, start communicating with your spouse about what's working and what's not. You know that your wife or your spouse wants a partner, not just a piggy bank. Challenge the beliefs that you might hold that are old and out of date and they just aren't working for you anymore. I
Hmm.
would have traded the big house for a closer connection with my husband any day.
Wow, and I could that your story just really resonates with me as well, because that's one of the things that my wife told me too. She's like, I want a husband. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't care about the house or any of these things. I want my husband. I'm dating my husband. Now, something that you said really stuck with me is you talked about how um, you know, Matthew 6:24, how you can't serve 2 masters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that holds true. That scripture right there really just blows out the whole entire notion that we can multitask.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because we can't, and we think we can. We think we can juggle all these different things. You know what I mean? I can do this. I can do this. I can have my, you're chasing after your own selfish desires, whatever. I deserve this or whatever. I'm guilty of that. That's exactly what I did. One of the things I heard a pastor one time say, and I thought this was just really, really astounding. He said, when your dreams become your spouse's nightmares, it's time to really reevaluate your situation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I
Ooh, I
thought it was
love that.
just, yeah, it was solid. I mean, it was solid. You know what I mean? And one of the things I always try to talk about on this, I mean, obviously this is a father, we're trying to ignite the fire for father engagement and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I like to bring on different perspectives to help fathers see, like from a woman's perspective, what a spouse goes through, and different things like that. I'm trying to add as much value as possible to each and every one of the listeners out there. With that being said, I think that a lot of women, who are with their husbands traveling, you know what I mean? You said that you never opted for, and see, I try to see if I can quote you correctly. Okay. It said that you never you never bought into being a home alone, staying at home. That was not something that you wanted. You just kind of got put in that situation,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that resonates with my wife as well. She told me the exact same thing. I didn't choose to be isolated because I bought a farm. I did.
Ooh,
I bought a
okay.
farm. I moved. We're 4 hours away from my family, 2 hours or about an hour away from her family at least. And I totally isolated her. You know what I mean? And it wasn't that I wasn't looking at as isolation. I wanted the country. I wanted my kids growing up, where they didn't have to worry about running out in the street and getting hit by a car if they're chasing their ball and stuff like that. I guess it was, fear on my behalf, because I knew I was going to be gone. I knew I was going to have to, I wasn't going to be there for them because I was going to
Yeah.
be working. So I wanted a safe environment. Well, what better safe environment than putting them out in the country where they have this big old property to run in and stuff like that, right? Well, that was wrong. You know what I mean? So anyhow, back to what I was saying. A lot of women now are, stuck in the trailers, traveling with their husbands. They're homeschooling. They're raising these two kids, and they're doing the best that they can.
Yeah.
Their husbands are providing. You know what I mean? They're working, and a lot of these women's, if you really ask them instead of asking the husband, I also at our church we lead a marriage on the rocks class, both my wife and I, and a lot of times when you ask the husband, well, how's your marriage going? He's going to tell you everything's great.
Right.
We're doing awesome, amazing. What we really need to do is ask the wives, how's everything going? Really? You talk to a wife, she's not going to lie to you. You're going to see the pain. You're going to see the hurt. You're going to see the disconnection in her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it's really smart to start really talking to our wives and asking them, how do you really feel?
And trust them when they tell you that they just want a husband and they don't need all of these other things that you think they need.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you one more thing. I know we're kind of getting
Sure.
lengthy on time. How did this whole situation that you went through, how did it create trust issues? And how did you overcome those issues created?
Well, absolutely. It created trust issues. Together though, it took a lot of mentoring, and going to counseling and doing some marriage retreats that were very intensive. Luckily, the community helped us to be able to do that. We were not in a situation to be able to, but God made it happen. And I think what helped was it didn't cross my mind. It crossed my mind into, oh no, does this mean we have to get a divorce? But it never crossed my mind that this is what I want, that I have to do this. I already made a commitment that this was going to be forever. And I realized that if we were going to get through, that I had to make another commitment that I was going to forgive him. And I couldn't keep rehashing things over and over. And we just had to grow. Now, I wouldn't say, he made it easy to get through that, but his willingness and vulnerability and the fact that he jumped back in to his walk with Christ, that's what made us stronger than ever. And that is like really why I tell people, I'm so happy that happened, because we now have a testimony. We have a story that we can help other people. And without that, we probably wouldn't be as strong as we are today.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm just so happy that you guys were able to go through the struggles that you guys did and were able to overcome them, as a couple. You guys absolutely went through adversity, and I think adversity makes people stronger, if you allow it to take its course and make the adjustments and allow that growth to happen. Pain is growth.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you one last thing, Adria.
Okay.
I read somewhere where it says all or nothing thinking is a trap. Okay. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Well, it's just not true. Just the all or nothing mindset, it kind of leads you into this idea that things have to be perfect. And, you know, if it's not perfect, then why do it? And we have to realize it's okay to not be perfect. That's really unachievable.
Yeah.
And so if we can come back to say, you know, my something is actually enough. I can give a little bit of me to these different areas. You know, all the areas that I said would be helpful, the physical activity, the nutrition, the sleep. You know, if you don't just fight against it and say, well, that's too much to add, that's the all or nothing. Just say, you know what, I can commit to 1 minute a day, right? Just one minute or 5 minutes. That 5 minutes adds up. You're going to be doing way more for yourself and your stress levels if you focus on what you can do. Those are those thoughts, those powerful thoughts that we have. You know, focus your energy on what you can do and what is going right, and you'll get there.
And Adria, thank you so much for all your information. I mean, I wrote so many notes on this. I mean, I know this is going to be a tremendous blessing and you're going to bring a lot of value to our listeners. One thing I want to ask is if you could please tell our audience how they can get a hold of you. I mean, I know you're going to have calls from this. Can you please share with us, you know, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. My website is cognitive-clarity.com. And I do provide mental health counseling here in North Carolina as well as Indiana. But I also provide coaching support, and that's over the whole United States. And, you know, for some of your wives, if they are, you know, experiencing some of the things that I shared, I also do provide a Facebook group. It's free. It's called Sanity Savers for Super Moms. And I teach how to feel good in your own skin and how to communicate your needs and all types of tips and tricks to, you know, just empower your wives to feel and look and, you know, just be their best.
Well, Adria, I thank you so much for just being able to share your testimony, to be able to share your knowledge with our customers, or not our customers, but our listeners. And I just really thank you for having the courage to just come on here today and just be able to bless us with your presence. I mean, this is a great,
Absolutely. Thank you.
absolutely, this is a great podcast, and I thank you for coming on here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And we'll talk to you soon. Okay, thank you.